Hi, everyone, and welcome to Brunch with Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, and I'm your host, BMR. And as always, I'm joined by the bearded one, Tex. If this is your first time here, please subscribe on YouTube to Tex's Front Porch. Give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, and don't forget to hit the alert bell. You can find us on Odyssey Radio, iHeartRadio, and on Facebook at Texas Front Porch. You can also reach us by email at paracryptidencounters@gmail.com or by text at 972-559-0988. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube to Bigfoot, Michigan Rob. If you enjoy our content and would like to support us, the Super Chat is always open, or you can Venmo us at @Tex6717. Thank you and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Brunch with Bigfoot, Michigan Rob. I, of course, am your host at BMR, and I'll be bringing up the bearded wonder, my buddy Tex, in just a moment. We've got a great show in store for you. Justin Chernipeski from Mountain Beast Mysteries is going to be joining us. This guy's an explorer. He's into Sasquatch. If you haven't subscribed to his channel on YouTube, Mountain Beast Mysteries, after this show, you got to check it out. I'm super excited. But before we get into it, there's a couple bills we got to pay. I'm going to bring up Tex here real quick as well. Of course, we're on Odyssey Radio and iHeartRadio. And for the first half of the show, you're going to get the first half of the show on those two radio stations. Now, you're going to have to subscribe to Texas Front Porch or Bigfoot Michigan Rob to get part two or the second half of the show, and you're not going to want to miss it. So just go to YouTube and subscribe. And also, I'm proud to say that we are now streaming live on radio in the Pacific Northwest out of Oregon on KPNL Radio. Thanks to Ann Celine and her group over there for providing content to the West Side in the PNW. So thanks for that. We're also on wherever you find podcasts, we're there. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on all of them. I'm not going to name them. Wherever you find your podcasts, we're there. We're also on Rumble. And I've joined the Twitter interspace, whatever you want to call it, at Rob_Bigfoot. I don't even know what to say. Twitter, I'm all new to all this. The Twitterverse. The Twitterverse. And Tex, we also have five live shows. Mondays, Texas Front Porch at 6:30 Central with Tex and Jason McLean. Wednesdays, Jason McLean questions everything with myself. We talk about weirdness and strangeness. Last night was a great show, by the way. That's at 9 Central. Thursdays, of course, is Brunch with Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, and Tex at noon Central. And also Thursday nights, Jason McLean, Serial Papers, 9 Central. And on Friday, the lovely, the talented Jessica Jones, 8 Central, Remote Viewing Investigations. And for the last time, Tex, I got to promote the Alabama Bigfoot Conference. Yourself, Jason McLean, and I will be speaking, along with some guy named Cliff Barrickman, Ken Gerhard, and a couple others. And again, for the last time, 6 weeks I've been promoting Jessica Jones and myself. She might be making an appearance. Southwest corner of the stage. Bring a Sharpie. We'll provide an autograph and a selfie. Don't miss that. You got to check that out. And Tex, I don't know about you. All kidding aside, I talk about Jessica Jones, the autographs and everything. But, man, I'm really geeked. This will be my first time public speaking on Sasquatch. I've public spoken before, but not on this subject. And it's going to be my first Bigfoot conference. And, man, are you as excited as I am?
I am. And I've spoken in front of people before, so that part's not that big of a deal. And we do this, so
Right.
it's I'm going to treat it just like this. So
absolutely.
Basically, we're going to be doing a live show, but with more awesome audience participation. Because we're going to be able to they're going to be able to actually ask questions and stuff. And of course, we're going to go over our encounters, um, but we're what we're really going to focus on is, and I was kind of talking to Justin about it, that the fact that just about every researcher out there is not running into just Bigfoot when they're out in the field. There's other strangeness going on, and we're going to try to untangle that knot, and let people know that, look, just because you're out there hunting Bigfoot and you're running into this stuff that's you're not really looking forward to. I mean, you're looking for, and it's it's okay to talk about that too, because there's a lot of Bigfoot researchers that don't want to talk about the paranormal side of it, even though they are running into it out in the field, because I think it's going to discredit them. It's not. It's we've got to talk about this because there's other stuff going on out there, and we can't just turn a blind eye to it. It's going to help us figure out and learn more about everything that's going on out there. It doesn't mean that you believe one side one way or the other. It's just facts. This is what's happening. This is what's going on. We need to be able to talk about it.
And that's such a great segue as I bring up Justin. Thanks for joining the show, Justin. Mountain Beast Mysteries, and Justin. Before we get into it, you did a documentary too on the supernatural Sasquatch, which we will get into. Is a nice segue, but I appreciate Justin joining us today. And if you'd like to introduce yourself to maybe somebody that in our audience and listening later that doesn't know what you're all about, what you do, Justin. So why don't you give us a brief intro?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me. My name is Justin Chernipeski. I have a YouTube channel called Mountain Beast Mysteries, and it's mainly about the subject of Sasquatch. Every now and then we kind of delve into other subjects of, mysterious nature, but primarily it's mostly about Sasquatch. So I've been looking into that subject for a while now, since, like I said before, that we started the show about 2014, very beginning of 2014, maybe the end of 2013. So it's been a little while now, and we've managed to build up a pretty substantial YouTube channel, and it's pretty much what I do all the time now is research Bigfoot, either online or through books or out in the field, and that kind of all comes together on the channel.
And kind of much like myself, and I'm not going to talk about my encounter. You were talking about your father from the tree line. Something happened out fishing, I believe it was, where rocks were thrown his way. And really briefly, that's how I got involved with Sasquatch. So the identical thing happened to me, and I actually but I saw the creature, and I had it physically roar at me. And if you want to get into that, was that really what first started you going into this endeavor? Was because of your dad's experience?
Yeah, so I've been interested in Bigfoot and pretty much every other mystery topic since I was a kid. But the actual act of going out into the wilderness searching for it didn't begin until I heard that story. So back, I can't remember exactly how long before I actually went out to shoot that film it was when this happened. I think it was like 5 or 6 years before I actually made the film. But my dad was out on this remote mountain lake on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, and him and a buddy were fishing on a little rubber dinghy, like a little inflatable boat, and they were startled to have a rock start tumbling down this slope, because this little lake is kind of surrounded by mountain slopes all around it. And so a large rock was tumbling down, and it caught their attention, and it was hitting trees as it was coming down, and then it eventually got to the shoreline and stopped. So they were kind of like a little bit weirded out by that. They didn't really figure it was anything weird because it just seemed like a falling rock. But then a little while later, my dad was facing this as it happened. A little while later, another rock that was like a big rock came flying out of the bushes at the shoreline, and it hit a tree. It hit a tree like dead on, and then it pushed the tree over and then rolled off the tree and plopped in the water and made a big splash. And my dad actually saw this. So, it's one thing for a rock to fall down a hill, but when a rock comes flying out of the bushes, it's kind of peculiar. And my dad was already a believer in Bigfoot. He was very interested in it. So that is what came to his mind. He's like, this has to be Bigfoot. This can't be anything else. No other animal can throw rocks like that or pick up rocks. And for a person to throw a rock like that, you would have to be a pretty big, strong person. So.
And Justin, really quickly, can you maybe perhaps bring your mic just a little closer? Some comments from chat. They can't hear you quite that well, and just it's up to you if you can. If not, it's not a big deal. I can hear you pretty fine. Appreciate it.
How's it now?
Better. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. So I don't know if you heard me well enough. If you want me to.
No. You did fine. It was just a little on the low side. You're perfect. Don't worry about it. No worries on our end over here. So yeah, I mean, so that got you into it. And if I can recall, because I have followed you a little bit now, and I must admit that when you first started on this endeavor, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just my assessment. When you first started, you were kind of more, I think it's great to have skepticism, healthy skepticism. We all have to have that in what we do. But when you started, you were more skeptical than you are today. I think today, even though you might not have actually seen a physical creature, are you more towards believing they exist? Are you still a big skeptic? Because I thought you were pretty skeptical, but over the years, I think you've progressed more towards, hey, you know what? There's something out there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So overall, as a whole, like I am more of a believer that this thing probably exists.
Right.
Like there's too much evidence out there, too many anecdotes. Like something is going on, and I've found tracks myself in the bush. So it's like something is out there, and a lot of my close researcher friends have found stuff as well, and I trust them. However, I'm very skeptical of 90% of the stuff that turns up online. Like a lot of the evidence and images and vocalizations and things like that. A lot of it is misidentifications. A lot of it's hoaxes. The internet is just a breeding ground for made up stuff to get sent out there and get shared around, and before you know it, like you don't even know what's true and what's not. So yeah, as far as like evidence goes that turns up on the internet, I'm super skeptical. But as far as like the subject as a whole goes, I'm pretty sure it must exist. I can't say for sure though, because I haven't seen it. But I believe you. I believe that you saw it.
Well, I did. It's the only reason, the only reason I'm back with the mic today or doing research on this today is because what I seen was terrifying. And, when I grew up, again, this is about you, but when I grew up, I believed in monsters and I thought that maybe Bigfoot existed. I saw the Patterson-Gimlin film as a kid. I got a basic book out of the library, and I think there was like one in the whole library back at the time, and I was interested. But, as a kid, you grow up, you read about Sasquatch. I saw Leonard Nimoy do the In Search Of, and I put it on the side. Life goes on. 4 years ago, when I'm fishing, rocks are thrown at my boat. I see this 9.5 foot tall creature staring at me. Reddish brown hair, fringe, looked like a person with Down syndrome. It looked, and I looked at this thing, and then it roared, it yelled, it screamed at me. I think I might be one of the few people see a Sasquatch and have it vocalize at you. But the thing about me, Justin, is what really baked my noodle. It transformed into something that I always say like looked like a demon. It had some teeth, fangs, and I got hit with energy, a vibration. I saw in black and white. I got paralyzed. My girlfriend fell off the boat, and I couldn't snap out of this trance I was in. I finally get my senses together. I get her in the boat, and the scaredest I was when I looked back to shore, it was gone, which leads me to, we talk about flesh and blood, we talk about supernatural, and I know you've done some documentaries on the supernatural Sasquatch, and I'm on both. I'm in both camps today. And what are your thoughts on that? Are you in the flesh and blood camp? Or are you thinking that it's dimensional?
Wow, that is the big question. I think there's elements of both to it, probably. To be honest, I think sometimes it can be flesh and blood, and sometimes it can be partially materialized into this reality, similar to a lot of like the UFOs that get captured on film they appear to be the same way, where sometimes they'll be solid objects in the sky, but sometimes they will only appear as lights or kind of partially materialized craft. I think it could be the same thing with Sasquatch, and I don't discount at all the First Nations legends and the mythology of Sasquatch. People always say, listen to the First Nations people, listen to the Indigenous people. But a lot of times, those people who tell you that they only believe in the flesh and blood side of Bigfoot. Yeah. So it's like, why are you telling me this when you won't believe it yourself? I'm open to anything. I've seen weird stuff that isn't related to Bigfoot. So, like in my head, anything is possible, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was something else going on with Sasquatch. It just doesn't add up, when you try to explain it as a flesh and blood creature.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it's like you were saying, it's most of the people that are in the gorilla camp or flesh and blood camp, however you want to look at it, they'll tell you, well, you gotta listen to the First Nations people. You gotta listen to them. But they talk about it being a spiritual creature for the most part. I personally, I know there's other stuff out there. I've seen the other stuff. I've dealt with the other stuff, but I've seen these critters too. And I think it's two different things. I think that maybe it's possible that, and I'm not saying I'm right, don't get me wrong, but I'm thinking that it's possible that there was two different things and they just kind of combined them, because we do see so much of the weird stuff in conjunction with these critters, and that's kind of that's the premise I'm going on, whether I'm right or wrong, who knows?
I have the idea that it could be just a real creature that has the ability to change its frequency or its vibration at which it exists, to basically become invisible to our eyes, because our eyes can only see certain light frequencies. The same thing with sound.
Right.
It might be an adaptation that it has developed. Because you hear about these like new age yoga types who are always like, oh, lift your vibrations and become spiritual. You hear all that kind of crap. Well, maybe this thing can do something like that, but to a point where it can become invisible and it slips out of this spectrum of light that we can see. So it might not be supernatural or paranormal or mystical, but it could appear that way,
Yeah, I think that it's a flesh and blood. I think it's got innate abilities that it can cloak. I believe that. Do I believe it walks through portals? I'm open minded like most. Yeah, perhaps it does. But you hit on a key note that is the thing that I really try to wrap my hands around is with First Nations people, as you mentioned. Some are staunch, flesh and blood, but there's other tribes, there's other nations that believe it's just a supernatural thing, a protector of the woods. So when you're doing research, now I don't want to call you a researcher. I don't know if you are. I know you're an explorer, adventurer into the subject, but that is the thing that I think that's the key element behind all this. You got both sides of the coin. I believe it's both, but some people are either left or right, and I think that what do? Do you decide which tribe is right or wrong? And there's no right or wrong answer, is there?
No, you have to be open to everything. It's kind of an ego thing when you just decide it could be one or the other,
Yeah.
And as far as like being a researcher goes, or calling yourself a researcher, if you look into Bigfoot and you research Bigfoot, you're researching Bigfoot.
Right.
Like, how a lot of people say, like, you can't have a Bigfoot researcher because it's not even proven to exist. You hear that crap all the time.
Yeah.
Dude, if you research anything, you're a researcher.
Yeah, I agree with that point.
Yeah.
I don't call myself a researcher, but when I'm in the woods, I look for Bigfoot. Thus, I just don't like the title. I'm an experiencer. That's what I roll with. I'm an experiencer on a YouTube show. So, but yeah. So, if you want,
camper
or a camper.
Yeah.
I was just talking to you the other day, and you were just coming back from some grueling expedition that you were on. Now, was that researching, or were you camping, or was this for something out, or was it strictly for pleasure?
This was a Sasquatch like investigation trip.
Okay.
So here in Alberta, we have a place called the Alberta Habituation Site. The Alberta Habituation Site has been featured on Survivorman, Les Stroud's Survivorman, Bigfoot.
Mm.
And it's the place where all these peculiar tree structures are located. It's pretty well known. There's a lot of people out there trying to like locate this place. A bunch of people have found out where it is and visited it. And a lot of the structures that were initially there have actually come down. They're on the ground now. So, we don't know if it was people who destroyed them or if they just fell down naturally or what was going on. But we were out at this area for 4 days or so. Some people were out there a bit longer, but every night we were up till like 4 o'clock in the morning, like poking around and, trying to make stuff happen, trying to find stuff. And, there were a couple times there was a dog in the camp that somebody brought, and it would just stop and be looking off into the bushes in the direction as to where most activity usually comes from. So you kind of feel sometimes that something could be around watching you, but you never really know. We did have a bait station that we had some fruit at. The fruit was all taken, and one of our audio recorders was actually damaged and on the ground. The screen on it was broken and smashed a little bit. So we don't know what did that.
It's always something, isn't it?
Yeah, the weird little things that keep you interested and keep you going back.
Oh, the recorder quit recording. The camera quit working. Oh, the camera got tore off the tree. The batteries went dead. It's just, it just never stops, man.
And you can't win because you'll take a photo and it's of course the blob squatch, right? Oh, well, what is that? And then if you're that guy that takes that photo and it's clear as day, well, guess what? You're not going to post it because people are going to call you a hoaxer because you know what? That picture is just too good. You know what I mean? That's what makes it tough.
I always say, like, if you have a photo that you believe was genuinely something, just post it and take the beating.
Right.
Yeah, that's what.
Well, what else are you gonna do? Just be like,
hey, you're right. Yeah.
I took this picture. I don't know what it is. I know it's bad. What do you guys think? Whatever. Don't say, here, I took this photo of Sasquatch.
Right.
Look how great it is. It's all about how you go about releasing it.
That's a good point. And, who's going to say, yeah, here's my picture of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Here it is. Check it out. I discovered it. No, it's perfect. Hey, what's this? What do you think this is? Leave it at that and let everybody's imagination roam free.
Well, and that's, honestly, that's how we put up all of our evidence on the channel is it's with a question mark because, I'm not going to put a picture up there that isn't clear or audio that isn't, spot on or whatever and say, this is this. I can't. No. Even the picture I was talking to you about earlier, Justin, I don't know what it is. I just know it's big and it looks like it does. But it's, it's not super clear. I've shown it to people and they say, I don't see anything, and hey, whatever, that's cool.
Yeah. But it's not bad that the pictures are out there and released. It's bad and unfortunate when the people who post or share stuff make claims that are definitive, or like sometimes I'll see photos that were taken completely in a different place and people will share them and they'll make up a backstory to it. Like, oh, this was actually taken here. Like, wow. You just ruined that evidence.
Yeah. And on that same, train of thought, it's like when people put out opinion as fact.
Right.
We see a lot of that too. Don't tell me that that this is how, you may have witnessed a Bigfoot doing squats and dancing with a tutu on, but that doesn't mean every one of them across the world is going to do the same thing, So don't try to tell me it's a blanket term. Now you put it in it's a piece of data. You put it in the data bank and you watch for it during your research. If you start seeing the same thing in a different area and somebody else sees it in a different, then you can start putting stuff together. But don't put, just because you think that they do this, and that's what drives me crazy. People make assumptions all the time. Well, and it's like, this is in my area. This is what I see in my area. So everything does the same thing at mine stuff is that, and you can't argue with them. There is no, you can't move them off that ledge, man. It's like, look, you gotta open up, man, because if you close yourself off, you're never going to see anything else.
Yeah. And people don't like being wrong. A lot of people, they can't handle if they're proved wrong, or if they admit to being wrong, like they can't handle that, especially online. It's kind of like funny to watch sometimes. Like, there's nothing wrong with being wrong about something, with being proven wrong, or being mistaken with something. Post your stuff.
I gotta tell you, and we've put some stuff up, and called it learning experiences, because I got one video up that's called owl porn, and when we were out there and when we heard it real time, we thought we had gold. I mean, and then we got to listening back to it, and I brought some other people and got some of their opinions on it. And it's just, it's barred owls, bickering over and having a threesome in the nest. I mean, that's what it is, but, I think that's just as valuable to the community as anything else. Put stuff out there. This fooled me. Here's something for you to learn from,
Exactly.
So, but don't put it out there like this is Bigfoot. You don't know that,
Yeah. Yeah. No, anything you put out there, if it is a mistake, it's good, because other people are learning from their mistakes.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to be mistaken or fooled or wrong.
Exactly. Exactly.
You can only go from, like, when you're out in the field yourself, Justin, and I must admit, when I watch Justin's his channel, it's such beautiful photography and video where you're at out there. Even if you're not a fan of Bigfoot or Sasquatch, you guys got to go subscribe to his channel just if you want serenity, because you're really in a beautiful part of the world. And with all that beauty, have you ever, when you've been looking for Sasquatch, have you ever, however, felt that you were being watched? Have you, we talk about evidence. Have you come across any tracks or anything like that? And we can talk about structures later. Tex isn't a big fan of structures, as you'll find out later. But have you ever felt that you were not alone? And I'm not talking about the wolves and the bears.
Yeah. Yeah. So in my video, The Supernatural Sasquatch, I always use this as an example because it was kind of intense. Like, I got called out to this guy's property to investigate some strange activity. He lived only about half an hour outside of a major city. He was out on an acreage, so it wasn't like a really populated area, but it wasn't super remote either. So it was interesting. And anyways, he had claimed that for days something was going into his yard and messing around with stuff and like throwing stuff at his house. And he said he actually saw this creature crouch down in the bushes, maybe like, I don't know, 30 feet, 40 feet away from his house, roughly. So one night, like, it was nearly midnight, this guy called me and he's like, "You gotta come out here right now. Something is here. Like, you have to check this out." I never met this guy before. In fact, this was actually the first time I ever talked to him. One of my other research friends was dealing with him before. And I ended up grabbing my equipment, grabbed a shotgun, drove out to this guy's acreage in the middle of nowhere, like late at night. He was a stranger. Like, I was kind of worried about that, like going to some guy's acreage. Like, this guy could be a murderer or something. Like, who knows what's going on, But anyways, there sure enough was a trackway going through his yard. Like, it had actually crossed a road in front of his property, and it went into his yard and then past his house and like through a forest behind his house. It just, that's pretty crazy. And they looked like Sasquatch tracks, and they were in the snow. This was in January.
Yeah.
And we looked around for a while. There were a few times where we thought for sure we could hear something like creeping around in the trees, and we would just be standing there like listening, looking. It was creepy. But before I left, we were going to go measure one of these tracks and document it a bit. And while we were doing that, something from behind the trees behind his house, there was like a, I don't know what you'd call it, like a ravine kind of down behind his house. So there was a steep slope. And we heard something out of nowhere start running up that slope towards us in the trees. Mm-hmm. And it sounded absolutely massive and huge. And it sounded like what you would imagine Sasquatch sounding like if it was running at you. And it ran maybe for about 6 or 7 steps. It was very short, and then it stopped. It almost sounded like what you would imagine a bluff charge sounding like. Mm-hmm. It just stopped. And I look at this guy, and he's looking into the darkness, into the trees, and he's physically shaking, like he's freaked out. And we're standing there, and it's dead quiet. And all of a sudden, I say, like, hello? I kind of called out to it. And then you hear a horse sound that sounds exactly like a horse. And I managed to capture that sound on video. However, we had walked the entire property. We had walked it the next day in the daylight. No sign of horses at all on this guy's property. No footprints in the snow, no horse droppings, anything like that. The only tracks that were in the yard were these Sasquatch-like tracks. So then a lot of people say, well, Sasquatch can mimic other animals. And that to me, like, sounds very far-fetched. Obviously not impossible. I mean, there's people out in the world that can make animal sounds, and they can do a really good job. Here in Alberta, at this Alberta habituation site that I go exploring at regularly, there's a large population of wild horses. So this is like a huge Sasquatch hotspot, and there's a population of wild horses. So if they're going to mimic any of these animals, that would be a really good one. And the horses they're quite docile. We can get quite close to them and everything as well. So I don't know if that's linked together what the deal with the horse noise is. I guess it could be this mimicking, but it might not be. It could be mistaken.
Wow. You know, I've heard of them mimicking too, like they can mimic all sorts of wildlife out there. And you know, the other day I got this email on this story, and I thought it was very strange. And frankly, I think it was more supernatural than anything, because these people were getting reports of Sasquatch in their area. And this isn't here in Michigan. Excuse me, this is in Grass Lake, Ohio. Very creepy area from what I understood. And they thought that they heard whoops during the day. And at nighttime, these guys are sitting around the campfire, and they heard mimics of voices coming back. And what they were hearing was human voices, in fact, mimicking what these guys were talking about around their campfire. Now when I heard that story, read that story, I don't think that's Sasquatch, but I do believe that they can mimic other, like the barred owl or any other, or wolves or bears.
Why don't you believe that might be Sasquatch?
I just don't know if they can. Personally, I don't think that they can mimic the human voice. But it was brought back. From this story, these voices they heard was the mimicking of the campfire stories these men were talking about around the campfire, and from the wood line, it was mimicked back to them. It wasn't their identical voices, but it was like metallic, and it was kind of in a whisper. But they heard it as clear as a bell, and they all felt. And then all of a sudden, they got a chill, and they felt that they were having an experience that they couldn't relate that to the Bigfoot, which they were, by the way, trying to research.
Well,
I'm just saying,
possible.
Anything's possible, and I have an open mind, but that's the first I've heard of that. And I spoke to a guy about that, and he had heard that similar stories, that Bigfoot's a great mimicker of things, but to talk in a human voice, you know, the closest I think we've come to is, of course, the Ron Moorhead and the Sierra Sounds, right? Now that I can go with. But if you heard it as clear as day, as like there's 3 of us talking right now, I don't know. I'd have to say that's a supernatural element, like Tex always talks about down in Brown Springs. To me, I would educated guess something else.
Yeah, that's kind of an experience though, that I feel like you would have to go through yourself to get a good grasp of what is going on. It's one thing to like listen to some person's retelling of it,
Right.
but if you don't hear it yourself, it's kind of hard to even come up with a theory on what it might be. Probably just an echo.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very possible that they've picked up sparse words, phrases possibly, not just from the English language, but the First Nations people, more so probably. But to sit to sit and just have a conversation, exactly what's going on. I don't think they're quite that level, but and when we're talking about mimicking stuff, we have a theory that everybody talks about hearing these owls that just are not quite right. This coyote that's not quite right. This whatever that's not quite right. Personally, I think that's the juveniles honing their craft, because I think once these things get old enough, they're so good that you won't tell the difference unless you look at it on a spectrograph and you see the frequency difference, between an owl and because if you look at an owl doing what he does and a human mimicking an owl doing what he does, and then you've got something that's in between it, don't match either one of them, but it sounds just like an owl. You got it's like I ran into a guy when I was up in New Mexico, and he was traveling across the country, and he was staying at all the parks, state national parks or whatever, for about a week or 10 days, and just moving his way across the country, which is awesome, by the way. But he found out I was from Texas. He goes, man, I was down there just a while back. He says, do y'all have any like different species of owl down there that sounds different than anything else? And I'm like, no. I was like, I got to find out where this is going. And we hadn't even talked about Bigfoot or nothing. He didn't know I was into it or nothing. And he goes, I said, what did it sound like? He goes, man. He goes, don't take this wrong, but he says, it sounded mentally challenged. And I said, really? I said, that's odd, and we got, and I didn't want to tell the guy. And then he went on to tell me a story that he was about a mile up the trail or so, pardon me, and found a horse skeleton, and it had a broken femur, not a lower leg, a broken femur. And at first I thought, well, it's a small horse, blah, 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 colt fell, whatever. He said, no, this is a full-grown horse. He said there was no marks on the body. The thing was not scattered. There was no teeth marks, nothing. But the femur was broke. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I didn't want to scare the guy, I mean, he's going across country staying at all these things. But
who knows what could do something like that. It's interesting, like as far as like the mimicking goes, like if you're a creature that lives out in the wilderness, you're hearing all these animals all the time, like for sure. If a person was living out in the woods, you'd probably try to make noises too. I mean, people like to quote movies all the time and pretend to be things all the time. So it's like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Well, as hunters, we do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Well, even these people that are researching Bigfoot do the whoops, right? I mean, and what's your thoughts, Justin? Because I don't know that I'd be the guy out there giving off a Bigfoot or Sasquatch whoop. You know why? It's because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I mean, you don't know what you might be expecting. Maybe you're asking them for trouble, right? What's your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. Like whoops have been recorded. So why are they making whoops at us? Like, I don't know why.
You know,
I don't know why they would do that. Like, I can understand like making noises of other animals, maybe just as like to try and fool us that it's not a Sasquatch that's there, it's some other animal near you, kind of like a disguise of some kind. But as far as like doing stuff like whoops and even like tree knocks and stuff, like do whatever you want. Like, who cares? Just try whatever you want to try. People in different parts of the country, in different parts of North America, they can try whatever methods they want. And if all these different Bigfoot groups research using their own methods, then we pretty much have all of our bases covered as far as research goes and research tactics and methods go. You know, I don't like to criticize what other people do in the bush, because if we're trying everything, I mean, isn't that great?
oh, I think it's awesome. I personally don't know that I would, because I wouldn't know what I'm talking about. But you know what? To move forward, you certainly have to. I mean, I even had the idea that if you took the Sierra Sounds and you put it on a speaker and you blast it in the woods, see what type of response you would get. I don't know that's ever been done, but you know what? I think that'd be a great idea.
We did that this past weekend. We didn't get any responses, but we did it, and it was kind of creepy to blast it very loudly throughout the forest.
We had what we lovingly called the 500-pound woodpecker for a long time. That would go off all the time, and I mean, it sounded like somebody had a cedar post and just banging it against a tree in rapid succession, and it would happen all the time. And we were out in the field one time. In fact, I saw him in the chat. He was out there with us. He's the one that figured it out, actually. Barry Brown in construction. We had been out in the field, and then we came back home. And when we got back home, he sends me a video. Just check this out. And I played it, and it sounded exactly like what we'd been hearing, except what we were hearing was louder, of course. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, holy crap. And what it was a video of a silverback beating its chest. And it's like, okay, then.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, you've got to, I agree with what Rob is saying, because I think people, if they're going to call blast, they should be ready for whatever they happen to attract, piss off, you know, because we have no idea what we're saying.
It's true, but at the same time, I feel like these things know, they're intelligent enough to know what you are if you're making sounds. I don't think you're going to get attacked. Like, when in recent memory have you heard of somebody actually getting attacked by Bigfoot and it being a real story?
Well, I haven't. I'm just saying you need to be prepared, is all I'm saying. You know,
you should be prepared. But as far as like saying, like with the whoops thing, like making whooping noises,
right,
and not knowing what you're even saying, like, what does that even mean to a Sasquatch? I don't think any harm is actually going to come your way.
I've been told by people, do not whistle. They hate when you whistle. I've been told by people that do not whoop. They hate when you whoop. They take it as disrespect, you know. And these are people that claim to be in communication with them. And I'm not saying that they're not. I'm just saying I can't say they are, because my concern is it's not Bigfoot you're talking to. And the only thing that I hear when I ask people, well, how do you know it's Bigfoot? Well, they told me it was. You know, come on now.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
So, but and it's not. I'm not mocking it. I'm not dissing their experience or anything. It's honest to God, it's legitimate concern, because if this is not Sasquatch you're communicating with, what are you letting in?
You know, so you're getting into more paranormal kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know. And you never know, like, what kind of energy some of these places have out in the woods either that you're wandering into, or what the history is of a lot of these natural areas. There are, like, at this Alberta habituation site, there's a lot of like sacred First Nations areas where they build like Sundance lodges and sweat lodges out in the bush that have probably been utilized for hundreds and hundreds of years, these areas.
Right.
So it's like, you don't even know at all what you're dealing with or what's buried where. Like the stuff you were telling me about the Indigenous graveyard. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna? You know, it's I don't know. I just don't think that. I don't think there's enough people out there that are open-minded, you know, like yourself. I mean, I can't tell you how pleasantly surprised or not surprised. How impressed I was to find out just how open-minded you really, really are. You know,
well, that comes from like seeing strange things that can't be explained. When you see something that it feels truly paranormal or supernatural, you're like, wow, okay, well, anything is possible. So why would I even bother closing my mind off to possibilities? You know, like I've seen stuff. So like in my mind, Sasquatch could be anything. It could do anything at this point. I don't know. I probably won't know for a while. But it, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if there was some sort of strange element to the Sasquatch that seemed, you know, supernatural.
And you know too, and I think anybody that does this, whether you're a researcher, an enthusiast, whether you're, you know, you're behind a mic doing a talk show or whatever, I think that it seems like more and more you do have to be open-minded, because I'll be honest with you, the last several people that we've had on the show and the last several people that I've spoken with or gotten emails from or messages from, it seems like when they're in the woods, and this is just what I've heard, my opinion based on people calling me and talking to me, they're looking for Bigfoot, yet they don't come across in their mind anything that reminds them or any evidence that looks towards the Bigfoot phenomenon, but some other strange phenomenon. You know, like that story of the guys in the woods having their voices mimicked back. Not their identical voices, but it was their stories they were talking around the campfire repeated back to them. Now, of course, I said earlier, I don't think that's Sasquatch, but then again, do I know what that is? I don't know. But I think that's something, in my mind, an open mind, it's more of a paranormal thing. And I think we encounter this a lot more than we do the actual Sasquatch.
Yeah, we encounter those things way more, and they're also they're more accepted than the Sasquatch subject. Like ghost phenomena and like UFOs and all that kind of stuff is way more accepted and not as taboo as Bigfoot. For some reason, Bigfoot is like considered way more taboo than the subjects, and I don't know why.
Yeah,
but
that's strange.
But the average person is most likely to believe in ghosts over Bigfoot, you know?
Yeah.
Which is like, what's the deal with that? Sasquatch could just be an animal, who knows? But I think it could be kind of sort of.
I think it, you know, honestly, I think it would I think we're on a path to disclosure. I think it's going to happen in my lifetime. I think that they are working on soft disclosure, just like they did with the UFOs. So it's not such a shock to everybody once it happens.
It'd be interesting to find out what happens with that and how they're going to go about doing it.
Yeah.
And then when they reveal actual images of Bigfoot that are believed to be real, what they're going to look like, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, you know, because I'm a firm believer that there's been bodies on slabs for a long, long time, you know, and and you know, they study these things. They know what's going on. They have to, you know, not just because we've given reports about certain people that has supposedly worked for the government or special forces or whatever, or, you know, science labs that's been involved in it or anything like that. That if you take every story out and say, that's all false. I don't believe any of them, but I believe this creature exists. You cannot. There's no way in the world that you can say, okay, our government has never had the opportunity to study them.
Well, they have their fingers in forestry. Like
exactly.
they have conservation, officers all over the place. They have biologists all over the place, like gridding out areas and studying the flora and fauna of whatever areas. Like the odds of them not knowing are slim. I think they would for sure probably know something was out there.
And I think that's a good point to stop on right now. I want to come back and talk too about a couple of your last videos about the peekaboo Bigfoot and perhaps a little bit about disclosure. However, for everybody listening on Odyssey Radio and iHeartRadio, for you, we have to bid you adieu. But subscribe to Texas Front Porch on YouTube or Bigfoot Michigan Rob to get the second half of this show. I don't think you want to miss out on that. And with that, Tex, if you want to cut us away, we'll be back for the second half after a 5-minute break.
We'll see y'all shortly. As soon as I find the button. Where'd it go, Rob? There it is.
I don't know. I don't know where that button is.
Four minutes to go, folks. 4 minutes. Three minutes. We're almost there. Two-minute warning, guys. 2-minute warning. 1 minute. 1 minute.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Brunch with Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, and our guest, Justin Chernipeski, Mountain Beast Mysteries, found on YouTube. And, we were just talking about, at the end of the first half of the show, we are talking about perhaps disclosure, and I had made mention about the peeping Sasquatch through the window blinds. But just to really quickly to allude on what Tex was talking about, we've heard about UFOs and the disclosure. There was that congressional hearing, which I don't want to get into that. I didn't think much of that. But let me ask you a question. Do you think if Sasquatch was founded, do you think there should be disclosure, or do you think that it's something we should just keep under the wraps?
That is a good question. I haven't really thought of that, to be honest. I mean, like, if official disclosure happens, then it's probably going to be in a way that the government could take advantage of it somehow and utilize it to their advantage, which is kind of what's happening in the UFO field. They're taking advantage of the UFO disclosure to make it seem as if they're like some sort of threat or, something along those lines. So, you got that Space Force thing and everything like that. Like, I don't know. I feel like with Sasquatch, if it is going to be disclosed, like, it's going to be when they find a way to utilize it to their full advantage. So I don't know. They must know about it at this point. But like, when is somebody going to come forward with actual definitive proof? That's the question. And is it good or bad? Probably, probably won't be for the best, because then everyone's going to be out trying to look for this thing.
I agree. I don't know if it's good or bad myself. I do know this. I'll just bring up one point. The logging industry, right? I mean, that could probably do some I think they'd want to keep that under wraps just from a monetary standpoint, because you're going to have people out in the woods more than expected, as you just made mention of. And I think that could, I think there's certain economies that could be affected, especially out in the logging countries, the Pacific Northwest, perhaps where you live. And I think that's something that I think they want to keep under wraps. And also, for me, if there was disclosure, the mystery of all this, it would be kind of, to me, a letdown in a way. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Well, yeah, people like us want the mystery to continue so we can keep doing what we're doing.
Right.
It's enjoyable. Like, it's fun going out looking for Sasquatch. It's adventurous. And, it's a fun thing to do. But I'm doing it for a reason. I'm not just doing it because I'm doing it because I want to find it. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, obviously, like, if it is found and like the location where they are, like if that is like put out there, then there's probably going to be protection measures put in place. But there's already so many areas of the forest that are protected. Apparently, like, you got all these national parks. There's wildlife sanctuaries everywhere. So I don't know. I don't know. Like, they're going to be cutting logs. Like, you can't stop them. Like, you need those materials. So is the government going to like actually go through with like putting an end to logging in areas where there's Sasquatch? Like, do you believe them? I don't.
I don't think they should be treated any different than the bear population. They need to be treated with the same respect, that you should treat the bear population. Let me put it that way. Get it's like, these folks going through Yellowstone, getting out of their car to take a selfie with a buffalo or a grizzly. Hey, if you're stupid enough to do that, you pay the consequences. And if Bigfoot disclosure happens, and if people want to poke the bear, they're going to poke the bear. But I agree with you, Justin. I think the national parks were put in place for them back in the day by Roosevelt anyway. But they got plenty of habitat. They're going to go places where we won't, and as much as people want to believe that just because we have pictures on Google Earth that we've explored everywhere that there is, we have not.
Well, even places in the bush that people have been, they're not occupied by people 24/7.
Right.
A lot of these like wilderness areas, there's for the most part never people around, especially off the trail. They could hide anywhere. They're moving around, just because an area is unexplored, or like it doesn't matter if an area is explored or unexplored. They can move around and they could be anywhere at any time. And like the area, like there's so many areas of forest that have already been like logged so many times, and like they're still remaining very well hidden.
I think the people that's going to have the biggest pill to swallow are all these scientists that's been poking fun at us, saying, for years and years and years, and they're going to have to admit that one, were either wrong, or two, they were lying. That's the only two ways around, through that one.
Or they have an unwillingness to even explore the subject, just because they don't want to lose their job, basically.
And two, like I said, I think I read somewhere there's over 1.5 billion, and it could be higher, than acres of forest just in North America alone that has not even been set foot in by man. But the one thing I will say, though, about the disclosure, maybe do we have it, do we not? When it comes to wildlife, Sasquatch, a lot of people, depending what your opinion is or what you founded, a lot of people think Sasquatch is a people, is an ancient civilization of a tribe of people. So I don't know that I wouldn't want anybody out hunting these things. If Sasquatch was proven, it was disclosed, hey, they exist, I don't think I'd want people out venturing out in the woods looking for these things with nefarious intention. You can go out and hunt a bear, but I don't think I'd want anybody out there looking for Sasquatch and hunting it. And again, it's not going to happen. We've not even found a body, and I'm just speculating. You might have more people out there, and I just think it would cause chaos. And I really would think they should just be left alone.
Yeah, I mean, for their protection, yeah, they should be left alone. Obviously, people like us, we just want to find them and photograph and capture them on video and document their existence. Because if we don't do that, then we're never going to attract the attention of actual scientists.
Well,
we have to do this.
And honestly, Justin, I've gotten to the point to where I don't even take a camera out with me anymore.
Really?
If I have somebody go out with me, now I'll audio record the crap out of stuff, but I've got trail cameras that we'll set up when we, every once in a while. But honestly, if I'm going out by myself, I just soon not try to film anything, because I'm not looking to prove anything. It's just, I know they're out there. I'm just looking to have experiences. But I have people that go out with me, say, hey, take all the cameras you want. I don't care. I'll set up my cameras for you, whatever you want to do. But, to me, it's just, I've nothing to prove. What are you going to,
Everybody has their own reasons.
Yeah. And arguably, what is going to be the definitive proof?
Well, I'm not a mind. I can't predict the future. It's either going to be a dead Sasquatch or it's going to be ultra high def footage.
I mean, well, but we've gotten decent footage, we've gotten decent audio, we've gotten tracks, we've gotten DNA.
But what else? I mean,
aside from throwing a body on the courthouse steps, what else can we do?
Well, there's not much. One might have to be taken out,
Yeah.
You can either find one that's been driven over by a logging truck, or
there you go.
It's that's the unfortunate thing, is that potentially one might have to be harvested, and nobody wants to be that guy. Nobody wants to be the evil killer. But
yeah, because you're gonna get raked over the coals, if you are that guy. But and it's like most people that's maybe had that opportunity and had them in their crosshairs. They couldn't pull the trigger because they looked too human.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
And there was a story, since we're on the subject, there was Art Bell had a show many years ago, about 15 years ago, about Bugs, this guy named Bugs out in Texas. He was out hunting, and him and his buddy, they lined up what they thought at the time was a bear. They had it in their sights. They took aim. They froze for a minute because they had, looking through the sights, thought that this, at the time, animal that they thought was a bear. But when they seen it, it kind of looked human-like. But you know what they did? They pulled the trigger anyway. I don't know how true the story is. A story is a story is a story, as we all know. But they came up across it, and when they got to it, the two hunters, Bugs and his partner, said they had dropped what appeared to be a human covered in hair, which later he identified to Art Bell as he thought it was a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. And they got overwhelmed with fear. They thought they committed murder. They actually buried it. And in this show, on the Art Bell show, they actually supposedly sent Art Bell a map as to where they buried it. And these guys thought that they committed murder. That's how human-like, that they supposedly shot this thing. They supposedly saw it and were just stricken with grief because they thought that they committed a sin. They thought they didn't kill an animal. They thought, indeed, it was an ancient person of some sort. It's a great show. You guys got to listen to it if you haven't, because I heard that. I'm like, wow, it opened my eyes to a lot of different things. And that was about 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of moral things that you got to deal with. If you're going to go about doing that, you have to be willing to kill pretty much a person, which is crazy. So I don't know. What do you do at that point? At that point, you'd have to leave that job to some sort of government people. I wouldn't want to be that guy. Nobody wants to get in trouble either.
I mean, that's what they did. They said they thought they were going to prison because they really actually thought they did something nefarious, and hence they buried it, tried to cover it up. But the guy had so much guilt, he went on the Art Bell show and said, look, when I die, Art, here's my map. I want you to send a team out there and extract it. Now, I haven't heard anything from that since, but I tell you what, it was compelling at the least. And to think that you did something that wrong, it had to be a mind-changing event or traumatic for the most part.
I mean, imagine. Sorry, I was going to say, imagine doing that and then having the guts to go online, on YouTube, and be like, I killed the Sasquatch.
Oh, no, you're right.
Your life would be over. Pretty much.
You'd be public enemy number one. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to not just get an attorney and everything. You'd have to change your identity, go into witness protection. I mean, it'd be a nightmare. It really would. It'd be worse than winning the lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a big discussion at our expedition over this last weekend. We talked about this a lot, and how would you, if you found a dead one, even what would you do? What part would you take? You're not gonna be able to drag the whole thing out of the bush. It is a thing that you might have to think about if you do come across an actual dead Sasquatch. What do you do? you know?
I think, the most, I mean, a lot of people talk about, well, you take a foot, you take a hand, you take this, take that. If I've got the time, if I've got the ability, I got to tell you, I'm taking the head.
It's probably the best part.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong too. Are there certain maiming laws though, even with wildlife? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I read this somewhere where it's actually considered a federal offense if you were to maim or an animal of the woods, right? Like cut off. I mean, I'm not so sure what part of the body you have to take, but it's actually against the law to do such certain things, especially if you're not taking the kill for food. Is that
Yeah.
do you guys hear about that law?
That depends where you are, obviously, but I heard, I don't know how true this is, but I heard in Canada, if a species is unrecognized and doesn't even have a name, you could probably take one out and not get crap for it.
No, see, it's just the opposite here.
Yeah.
I think it's here that I can't remember which way it is. It's either here or Canada that you either get in trouble or you don't get in trouble, but they're the exact opposites on that law.
I know we get in trouble for killing pretty much everything else, so I don't know. It's nothing of what I'm saying is 100% fact. This is not fact check.
No,
so don't go killing Sasquatch.
And I just brought that up. I was unclear that I thought I read that somewhere, but why don't we just turn gears just a little bit here, because I just saw your last video you put out, and everybody listening, go ahead to Mountain Beast Mysteries, subscribe to the channel. It's a great channel, a lot of great information. So you got something sent in to you about a Sasquatch peeping through the window, through the blinds, amongst other things in this video. And you actually, if you look at this video, you can actually see kind of a face and an eye, I believe. And why don't you walk us through that and give us your thoughts? Because I thought that was pretty compelling.
So that footage is actually from Australia. It's a yowie. And I got an email one day from this guy saying that pretty much every night these creatures come to his house, and they've been coming to his house for like a long time. And he said it all started when he was like down in the dumps, kind of like going through some stuff personally, And they started visiting his home and like coming up to the window and doing what you see in the footage. You can see what looks like eye shine of something, almost looks like a face. It's really, it's hard to see. It's through a little crack in the blinds, and it's dark outside. So all you're seeing is that eye shine. Now, what a guy has to do is set up a camera so that you can just whip the blinds open when it's there and get the whole face, But yeah, these things have been going up to his house. They've been like shoving sticks through the fence and like just leaving, weird things behind like that. He apparently has collected a bunch of hair that he's willing to send to me. So I want to get some of that so that I can compare it to some hair strands that I have here. I don't know if like evidence of Yowie has really been compared in detail to Sasquatch from North America. It'd be interesting to find out if the hairs I have here are actually from Sasquatch. But yeah, this is just an ongoing thing. He says they hang out in the sewer system, like behind his house. So that is very strange and interesting. But overall, there is a weird sense that there is more than just a flesh and blood thing going on here. There's like a level of mysticism and strangeness that is, almost supernatural. There's one video clip where there's like a bench or a chair way in the background, and apparently something was sitting on it, kind of, and you can sort of see like a little bit of a dark mass on top of it, but it's really hard to make out. And then some other images where you see like dark shapes and masses, but it's not very clear or defined, so it's really hard to tell. It's like, what do you do with that? You have to get it on video. We have to at least try.
Yeah, that's where I have to go. Well, maybe you're not dealing with Sasquatch.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, again, if you watch this video, you guys, you'll know exactly what we're all talking about, and I think it looks like now that peering through the blinds, I could make something that had a shape and a form to it. But now, when you mentioned about the dark shape on the park bench, and that's the same area, that's the same person, correct?
Yeah, it's in his backyard.
So yeah, it begs to wonder if the thing peering through the blinds was an entity of some form. We just don't know, and that's what makes it so intriguing and fascinating. It really
Well,
does.
he's got hair. He's got hair samples. So
Yeah, I heard. I do. That's right. I was going to bring that up. What was your? Was that contaminated, or has that been? You were you trying to send that in, or what? What was the story behind that?
So I have hair samples here from Alberta. He's got hair samples from that creature. He's going to send some here, apparently. I want to compare the two to see how they relate, to see how the Sasquatch of North America would compare to the Yowie of Australia. But I don't know if the hairs I have are genuine yet. The physical look of them looks like Sasquatch hair samples I've seen before, but I haven't put them under a microscope. And also, these hairs that I have, I'm like 99.99% sure they're contaminated. I'm pretty sure the person who collected them didn't even wear gloves and just grabbed the hair. So you can really only look at the physical structure under a microscope and compare it in that way.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think? I don't know. That's again, if it's got hair, to me, it would suggest a flesh and blood creature, right? I mean, the last time I heard ghosts or apparitions, they're transparent. But then again, I mean, I hate referring back to my encounter. I know what I saw, and it was weird because throughout this whole time, what I saw was flesh and blood, and it looked like a person with Down syndrome. In fact, I was 90 feet from it, and it had gray skin, kind of wrinkled. It had the eyes were offset. It looked like a human being, man. And then what I say is, what made me wonder was I looking at a flesh and blood creatures when I got hit with, I guess it's infrasound, but I tell you what, this was a boom, a sonic boom of energy that blasted me. My girl fell off the boat. I was paralyzed. What I seeing of the colors along the forest, the pretty greens, yellows, reds of the forest line on this lake turned black and white, almost like it was looking through a filter. And this thing transformed into something that I will always say, and I'll continue to say, was a demon. Was I looking at a demon? No. And then the further research I've done, a baboon can kind of make his face look totally different and metamorphosize. So I still have questions. I've spoken with a lot of researchers and people experienced in the field that have kind of settled. I have, in my opinion, now what I saw. But for the average Joe out there to never have this experience, you're still amazed and you still have to wonder what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and it also affects the way you conduct your research too. If you're looking for something physical, flesh and blood, it's gonna be different as far as the research goes in the way you would search for something that's paranormal. You use different tools, different methods. But like, if this creature has the ability to say disappear, yet it's leaving hair behind, that means like when it's fully materialized in this reality, it can leave trace evidence behind, and its hair won't disappear when it vanishes or whatever. It materializes here and then it stays here, but not when it's still attached to the creature. If it disappears, then the hair that's on it goes with it.
It's hard. I don't know. I don't know about the whole interdimensional thing. That messes with me, because it's like you're talking about these creatures that are they purposely doing this, or is this another entity, throwing these portholes out and trying to catch these creatures, or what's if that's the case, what's going on with them? I mean, and this comes from somebody that's actually had a time loss incident, and I'm still on the fence. I'm still on the fence about this stuff, but it's even when you, I don't know, even when you've had this crazy stuff happen to you, personally, I still can't make up my mind on what's going on.
Like, it could be an interdimensional portal type thing. It could sure be that, but it could also, like I said, be some sort of defense mechanism that it's developed.
Yeah.
Like to be able to change its frequency and appear to disappear, seem to disappear, or maybe it actually does disappear out of this reality. It's like, how do you find that out? How do you confirm what's going on there? You really can't. Even if the creature was fully materialized in a physical form and died and left the body here, you probably wouldn't be able to make it disappear. It'd be stuck here as a physical being,
And that brings it, that opens a whole new can of worms, What if that's why we can't find a body? What if when they die, they disappear?
Yeah, maybe.
Their frequency changes and they go back to their realm or whatever. What if that's why we can't find a body? But what happens, I guess that would also explain these being shot, and then them disappearing. Maybe it wasn't the government taking them. Maybe they're just, when they shot them, it threw off the frequency. They went back to their realm. I don't know. It's just
yeah, you can really go deep into that strange stuff and come up with all sorts of ideas.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, all we can do is go out and look and then see what presents itself, and document it.
Yeah.
It is a big mystery, and there are so many elements of it.
It is fabulous too, and it's like, even though you had the hair sample that you've gotten, and we even talk about, again, there's both sides of the coin, and you hear these theories about their hair being translucent. So when they're in the woods and the light hits them a certain way, or they actually position their body a certain way where they blend right into a tree. You can walk right past an oak or whatever tree that's in the forest, lining the forest, and they just blend in, and you could be standing a foot from them, but you would never see them. Like these people that are looking at a stump, then all of a sudden you hear the reports about this stump all of a sudden went from a 4-inch stump and it kind of materialized into something 8 foot tall and then disappeared. You know what I mean? There's so much out there to wrap your hands around, and that's why I think this is just going to be never ending.
Yeah, it's quite possible that it never ends and that it never gets discovered in our lifetime. I hope that's not the case.
Right.
It seems like there's more and more reports, out there, and with the internet nowadays, more people are becoming willing to share stuff, which is good. More people are coming forward with stories. So who knows how things are going to pan out in the next 5 years, 10 years. Might even be like tomorrow somebody comes forward with something.
Boy, wouldn't that be something? We could announce that at the Alabama Bigfoot conference, where me, Rob, and if that ain't a segue, I don't know what is. We could announce that disclosure at the conference, where Alabama Bigfoot conference in Oxford, Alabama, at the Civic Center, where me, Rob, and Jason are going to be speaking Saturday.
Absolutely. We got to get our stuff together for that. And Justin, you know what? It's a pleasure. I'm so glad that you came on and joined us. I know you don't do a lot of interviews. You have an awesome channel. I think you're an awesome guest. I learned quite a bit from you today, and I think our audience did too. And I can tell by a lot of the reaction in the crowd that they did. I think that this show really went well, and I respect what you do out there. And I think you're a great filmmaker. I watched your shows. I like them. And I'm going to continue to promote you. And speaking of promotion, where can we find you if we want to get a hold of you, and any social media that you're on?
Oh, yeah. Well, the main, obviously, channel is Mountain Beast Mysteries on YouTube. And I think on TikTok, my account's Mountain Beast Mysteries. And then on Instagram, I'm Justin Chernipeski. So there's only one Justin Chernipeski out there in the world, I can guarantee you.
No, I guarantee you that. I take a couple days to get your name right. I think I said it right, so that's good. And Justin, once again, thanks for joining us. And again, as Tex said, June 10th and 11th, we're speaking at the Alabama Bigfoot Conference, myself, Tex, and Jason. And yeah, there's some other notables that'll be there. But guess what? I'm promoting us because I believe in our team. And I hope I don't tick off anybody when I meet him here this weekend. But guess what? I don't care. BMR don't care. He believes what he believes. I believe in Justin. I believe in Tex. I believe in everybody in chat and everybody going to listen later, tomorrow, or the next day. Tex, if you can find the button. And Justin, could you stick around just for a couple minutes after the show? I want to talk to you. And you guys, Tex, find the button. Until next week. In fact, today's Thursday. Zero Papers tonight with Jason McLean. Friday, Jessica Jones, Remote View Investigations. And then we'll be back next week to wrap up what we found and what we did at the Alabama Bigfoot Conference. Tex, if you could find the button now, I'm done speaking. I'm done spewing.